Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to the course Disaster Recovery and Build Back Better. My name is Ram Satish Pasupuleti. I'm an assistant professor in Department of Architecture and Planning, IIT Roorkee. Today I'm going to talk about cultural heritage reassembled. It was one of the projects where I was familiar with, and I was also partly part of the ongoing project of the moving Kiruna in Sweden. And today I'll explain you that how the whole city has been moved and what are the challenges involved in this moving as town, and what kind of participatory approaches has been adopted, what kind of concerns it has the development authorities have shown, and what kind of confusions they have ended up with. So this whole thing I'm going to discuss briefly about the Kiruna project, where I was working with Professor Kristina Nilsson and my colleague Jenny Sweholm from Luleå Technological University, where she did her own PhD as well. So I'll be referring to their contributions on their academic work, also the project work. So it will give you an idea of what are the various challenges in the relocation context. So when we talk about Sweden, we always think about the Scandinavian geographies with very harsh climate conditions. If you ever go to Stockholm up south in the Swedish part, it is much more closer to the European landscapes, but the northern climates are much harsher. I used to live in Luleå Technological University in a place called Ronio, which is just 35 kilometers from Luleå. And here the temperature goes off to sometimes minus 20, minus 30, minus 32. So this is how the variance in the winter times. And many of the months we don't see even the sunlight. It hardly comes for 1 or 2 hours and then disappears very gently. And in the summer we don't see at all the night. The sky never gets darker. So it's very extreme kind of temperature, either minus 30 degrees, minus 20 degrees, minus 10, or maximum the plus 15 degrees sort of thing. So this is a place somewhere in the Arctic Circle, after the polar circle, on the border of slightly in the border of Norway and the Sweden, the Finland. So this is the place where I'm talking about Kiruna, and this is the Arctic Circle. So in the photograph, what you are seeing here is a mine. You know, countries like Sweden, they're rich by means of mining investments, the mining resources. So whereas in Norway, it is rich in oil resources. So similarly, this particular mining town has been not a very old town, but it is hardly 150-year-old town. So this is the iron ore mine, what you are seeing, and this is the Kiruna town. Now, just imagine any mining town in this kind of harsh climatic situation. It existed, the people are existed because of the iron ore, because there is a business sector involved in it, because there is a livelihood component involved in it. Why would people go all the way to minus 30 degrees and start living there if there is no employment opportunities? So when this iron ore have started just 150 years before, and that is where people started developing a small habitat for them. And the problem with this mine, it is one of the richest ore. They started digging the mine and they're going underground. When I was living in 2013, it came almost down to the city center, close to the city center. So now they thought that this is going to, because the mining activities may hamper the living of the city, the city life. It may, any time, it can bring danger to that whole habitat. So then they thought, why not we move the city into a different place, a safe place. So in that way, they started analyzing. The geotechnical analysis have been done, and they looked at how this mining activity keep on going in different stages, and by 2033 it will almost reach here. So in that way, you are actually living on, the whole city is on an iron ore, which is not safe for living. So that is where the thought process of why not we relocate to a better place, a safer places. If you look at the Kiruna context, first of all, there is also Sami tribes lives around this region, and whose main occupation is about reindeer herding. And they have these dock sledges, and what you are seeing is the river which gets frozen completely, and it is used, the dock sledge is used as a kind of passage. So here, the winter climates, one has to understand, a barrier becomes path and a path becomes a barrier in a different season. You see, so here a barrier as a river has now become a path. It is connecting different spaces. And similarly, the Sami tribes, their traditional livelihood is all reindeer herding, and that is how the tourism has been enhanced. Like Ice Hotel is one of the place, and also the Laplands near to the Finland side. They have also some tourist attractions of Santa Claus village, which we call as Rovaniemi. So that is how this whole winter experience is an very authentic and it's unforgettable experience for the tourists who come to this particular place. Now when they start deciding to move, where to move? So finally they have identified a place A and place B. This place is basically next to the Lusavara mountain, which was earlier a mine has been closed, and there is no mining activity going to happen there. And it is much more safer. Obviously, when we think about if it is a safer point, we always prefer, yes, we may move to A. Because in B, the problem is the mining activities going in this direction. So sometime later, it may reach to B as well. So we may have to go somewhere else. But in reality, the authorities have chosen this. How they have chosen? Because in order to move a city, you need to think of moving the services, the whole underground services. Service infrastructure has to go. And also there is also some uncertainty how after 50 years, what is going to happen with this mine. So there are a lot of reasons they prefer to go for the B, because it's easy to extend their services part of it. Then the Kiruna commune and the mining company, the state-owned mining company, LCOB, altogether they have actually floated a competition and for the new city center for Kiruna. And finally, the winning entry is the white architecture with Gilardi plus Helston Architecture, Space AB, and Vectura Consulting and Evidence BLAB. So like there's a white architects and his partners have won this company. They developed about a 100-year master plan, how from 2018, how it can be gradually improved. Like for instance, first you move this and then later on this whole thing is built up. So in that way, gradually how the city has to be progressed, and about a 100-year transition plan they have developed. Now when they started developing, one of the important aspects is they talked about these highway corridors. If you ever happen to make these corridors onto this line, then what kind of impact? Because the Sami tribes, they says that the moment you are making these highways and the whole development, it is going to take the reindeer herding routes. These are what you can see is reindeer herding routes, and these grazing lands become smaller, because the moment you are taking out the whole city from here to there, and this whole transition is going to have an impact on the ecosystem, and it's the animal grazing sources. Where do they graze? So that is what the Sami tribes have actually understood the whole process, and then finally they have decided they moved this whole highway corridor, which is connecting to the railway station and the new location as well. So the highway corridor has been constructed, and this is how they even showed the concern of the tribal people and their livelihood resources, and also the natural resources as well. Now comes the problem. Yes, we are moving to a new city. Maybe the whole housing sector can be rebuilt again. Maybe we can demolish the whole housing. But what happens to the culture? Because there are a lot of emotions which are attached with by these people. One is the Kirunavare church and the town hall, and there are also many other buildings which are all listed buildings in 1984. So what happens to this particular historical buildings, the listed buildings which carry a lot of emotions, and society have relied upon these emotions, and it has created an image within the society. So in fact, this church was actually designed by architect Gustav Wickman, and also the town hall where Otto and Wern have designed this, and in fact this is a place for a kind of civic center, the civic engagement center is already, this is one of the cultural image of this particular Kiruna. It is not very old, like 14th or 13th century, they are hardly 100-year-old, but still they carry a lot of meanings to those people who lived there. So the problem is how to move these heritage buildings. We can't, it's not easy to demolish these important buildings and then we are going to construct a new set of image, because it is to play with the people's emotions, people's belonging. And Jenny Soholm, what she did was, because in this particular point of time, there's a huge jargon on, who is doing what. And there are many reports coming on, reports. And in fact, there are also, to understand the Kiruna character and the belonging of it, like you can see, this is the Elkobi company land, and this is the Kiruna commune, this is service and the supply town. And wherever the railway aspect is there, this is the railway land. So you have these three are the major stakeholders of the Kiruna. One is the railway, the other one is the Elko state-owned mining company, and the other one is the Kiruna commune to serve the people. And a lot of documents, a lot of heritage board, there's a lot of documents coming in Kiruna councils, country administrative board, and LCOB, and there are a lot of consultants which are developing all the reports. But then Jenny, what she did was she tried to really put together, and she tried to analyze, what is the purpose of this whole document and how are they related to the conservation of these heritage buildings, what are they talking about, to get the jargon of what is happening. So I'm just showing a gist of her work. And then in 1984, what you can see here is like it's all the red dots which are actually talking about the designated areas. They're all the listed buildings around, and there's a conservation plan which has been adopted in 1984. And here the heritageation have actually referred to various aspects. One is the addition of new heritage, because when they came to know that yes, the Kiruna is going to move further, and then there is a relocation aspect which has been planned out for these heritage buildings, because apart from the reconstruction aspect, they're also talking about the relocation of these heritage buildings. So then that is where people started recognizing their listed heritage buildings and the designated areas, and that is where probably they're claiming some more importance to certain buildings, and also the reaffirmation of already designated heritage. So how they are giving a reaffirmation, a special importance on it again, so that to emphasize that this is the most important building, you need to keep that on the move as well. Reinterpretation of already designated heritage, and the rejection of previously designated heritage. This is where the whole process went on. Let's see how it went. And there have been a lot of the controversial aspects of how this particular culture has going to be taken into account in the move process. So that is where even the General Director of National Heritage Board also wrote in debate article that the battle is about which history we will be able to tell about Kiruna in the future, and thereby about the modern Sweden of 20th century, right? So this is where the Jenny's work talks about bringing all these interpretations of what different agencies are thinking, what the government's thinking is about, what different boards are thinking about, so. And when you are taking an opportunity of the move, always people think about how we can envisage with the modern thinking, how, what kind of history we are going to tell about it. Are we still bringing back these old things, or you are completely coming with a new thing? That is whole thing, the concerns of the different stakeholders. And coming to the heritization process, I would like to emphasize on three important aspects. One is the heritization, reheritization, and deheritization. So one is the heritization process. As I explained you that in 1984, the whole listed the conservation plan has been developed, and when the Kiruna is on move, when people know that these buildings are going to move to the new location as well, and that is where they started reaffirming the significance of these heritage properties. Even the old miner have stayed here, the first miner have stayed here, or his cottage, or a railway track, or railway co. Like that, there are various aspects which come into the picture, and then they started reheritization. That is where Jenny calls it as reheritization. And then finally, this whole media jargon is very different, and interpretations are very different. At the end of the day, the decision makers come onto the board looking at the financial cost, how much it is going to cost to move that Kiruna church or the town hall. A Kiruna church, for example, a heritage structure which has a huge, long, almost very long span structures of the wooden shingles. So they have to take care of each and every shingle out and carry it and place it and erect it. So this is going to cost few millions worth of project. So then they try to assess the budget of it, what kind of. So after all, taking care of the practical considerations, that is where they started looking at the last stage of, in a more practical way, of how we can delist certain buildings. So the deheritization process have started, and that is where they come up with about 12 black horn buildings. And there's a few, about 17 structures, 12 to 17 structures they have identified. Yes, these will be taken care of on the move. Also, there have been complexities in the spatial planning practice and theory. I was working with Professor Christina Nilsson, and Christina's work is based on planning complexities. Being a landscape architect and the planner, she looked at what kind of challenges involved in it, and especially in moving the town. And she adopts the critical realist theory and methods, and she brings different aspects into what are the real challenges. In fact, if you look at it, there's LKOB, which is a state-owned mining company, and the Kiruna commune, which is a municipal board, and whereas the local communities, the people who are actually relying on the town. So there is always a tripartite relationship with these three stakeholders. One is LKOB is the financial support for that, and the administrative support is the Kiruna, and the people relying on both. Now, the people has a confusion. Who is going to take the move? Who is responsible for the move? Because whether it is the duty of the municipal administration or county administration, or it is the duty of their funding agent, who are actually the whole and sole mining institution, LKOB. Who is the decision maker here? Whom can we approach, right? So there's become who is on a higher order, whether the Kiruna commune is on a higher order, whether the LKOB is a higher order. That has created a lot of confusion. Also, the uncertainties. Today, yes, we are planning for next 50 years. We are preparing ourselves, maybe after 50 years, we may have to move to the next place. But then 50 years before itself, they are also thinking about how we can invest on advanced technologies like prefab or anything, or to easily move the places later on. So all these thought processes went on. But the real problem is, let's say in another 10 years, they have invested a huge amount of money in the relocation. With the advanced mining tools and techniques, let's say in another 10 years, the whole mine is closed. Or if the mining sector comes into a different financial crunch, so what happens then? What happens to this kind of investment? So all these certainties and uncertainties are in question, because that is where they have to look for kind of alternative livelihood systems. And the chaos which has been created by this interrelationship and the non-linearity, and also the interdependencies, because these people depend on this to maintain their commune, and these people depend on the financial aspect, and this whole relationship are very much interdependent with each other. And the actor network perspective, whose role is what, who will take a decision, what role is commune has to play, what role the LCOB has to play. This whole challenges have been a big task. Also the self-organization, how each of the institution is self-organized by itself in its role, how they defined it. And the second thing is about the time variables. When we say about the time variables, what kind of because we are working in a harsh weather conditions, and how we are going to move this project. Let's say if you are taking about 5-year, 10-year, 2022, if you want to move it up, then what segment of the people we have to take care, and then how to connect them again back to the workplaces. So there's a lot of project management issues as well. So that is where I would like to brief you about these are the challenges were involved. And what I really appreciate in this process is Sweden, unlike in many countries in South America, when they are moving some towns or some hamlets because of the mining issues. In South America, what they did was they just gave the Chinese companies, they gave the money to the people, and they just asked them to vacate the places. Wherever they want, they go. But here they are at least considering even the animals, the grazing grounds, the ecosystem, and they are thoughtfully thinking about what happens to the future if we go like this, if we invest this, was it really worth? That is definitely a very thorough thinking process, I can say. And still there are many challenges even within that sparsely populated urban areas as well. I hope this will help you in understanding the challenges in the relocation context. Thank you very much.